Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. قل رب أعوذ بك من همزات الشياطين وأعوذ بك رب أن يحضرون. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل أعوذ برب الناس ملك الناس إله الناس من شر وسواس الناس الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس. Assalamu alaikum. This video is called Myth of Diminishing Returns. And what we'd like to talk to you about is the recompense is guaranteed with God. The law that God exists, and the Lord is watching over us, and that any charity we give, we get a recompense. And not only a recompense, but because we believe that to God belongs all things, everything in the heavens and the earth, and God will recompense us for whatever we give. And we're supposed to give to the needy, the charity, the travelling in, to the relatives, to the poor, and to free the slaves, to feed the orphan, to feed in times of hardship. These are the things that are commanded of God that we should do, that we should practice. What we want to talk to you about, what I want to talk to you about, is the capitalist system first of all, and the slave trade, the slave masters and the pay masters. First of all, and European history, because in European history, in the 17th century or before or after, I don't know when. I'm not very good with dates, and I usually have a general idea when things happen, but I don't really keep account of the actual date, because my mind's not very mathematical in that sense, in timelines. And even if you ask me, I know what I have done in what year, when things have happened in my life, but as for the historical events, I'm not really sure. I have a general gist about when things have happened, and what I want to say is there was this proponent of capitalism saying that the laws of diminishing return, which meant that things would reduce in production as time passed, from being a lot to very less as it diminished through time. And another argument is I'll talk to that in a minute, but first I want to talk to you about paymasters and slave masters. Now, what we know is if you give, you will receive, and that's a law from God, not a law, a commandment, a rule, almost as real and certain as a law of physics or mathematics or anything. It is as certain as anything that if you give, you will receive, inshallah. And with God is a great recompense. And if you pay, you will be paid. That was the way things should be, to separate paying and paid from giving and receiving, which is a kingdom, not an order. Whereas when the Europeans went to Africa and started buying slaves, they said, I don't know if it said it then or if it's during the Egyptian times or whenever, or civilization, but as long as this is going on, there'll be corruption and a lot of extortionate, usurious banking, and many illicit earnings, because they said if you give, you will be paid. If you pay, you will receive. And what that meant was that people thought, in the West, they thought, well, there's money to be made. Buy cheap, sell more expensive somewhere else. And this has led to the stock exchange and all these different kinds of capitalist model of economics. And which they only realised, possibly, was to spying and to witchcraft and disbelieving in God. Instead of being charitable, they became usurious. Instead of being kind, they became beasts. Not even beasts. I don't know, the opposite of cruel. They became cruel. And so to make a profit, what would happen was the Africans would sell lots of slaves for a price to make a profit, and then the stock will be taken to America where it will be distributed or done whatever. And this is the nature of business since then. And it led to plundering, exploitation, corruption, lack of enlightenment, chaos, and free market economy. It's all about money, the root of all evil. That's what all they're trying to say is that they become an independent God by serving money instead of God. Now, I'm not a white person. I'm an Asian person, and the white person has a different narrative. They have a narrative of God being a father, which means that just as the jinns are spawns of Satan, they understand the element of father, and in a certain sense, that's what it means. It's just representing the neutral. That's what omnipotence represents, the neutral. And so just as there's positive, neutral, negative, and future, present, past, a power of the present, and miracles of the present, and that what Jesus showed, power is the source of goodness, not power is the source of power of good and evil, and how God is omnipotent. So what happened with this law of diminishing return? Why did this happen? Because in the West they believe that the sperm, and this is why they're called wankers really, because it's a wanker's paradise. They think the sperm is more important than the virginity of a woman in a relationship. And they think the quality of the sperm will diminish as time goes on. And such things like that. I'm not sure if it does or not. I'm not sure if it ever does. There's a lot of categories and a lot of things which can affect the quality of the sperm just as much as it can deteriorate the quality of the sperm, and genetics, just as medications and all these drugs can cause, and cigarette smoking and smoking. And all sorts of things can affect the quality of the sperm, and not just the fact that it's not the first lot of sperm, or the second lot, or the third lot. And this leads them to a resistance against their own sexual desires and sexual functioning. Instead of releasing it, they store it up until it becomes a disease and an incurable virus. And the white man is a product of witchcraft anyway, because they look to the history written by the Victor and Messiah, son of David, and borrow all the qualities. They're just copying their things. But they don't choose to believe in God. They choose to disbelieve in God because they're pagans and polytheists. They haven't denounced the devil and they haven't believed in God. Instead, they go around claiming that there can be another God with God. And anyway, has the world shown that there's a law of diminishing return? No. It showed that the capitalist system of pay, if you pay, you will receive, and if you give, you will be paid, leads to exploitation. Instead, if you pay, you will be paid, and if you give, you will receive. Which means there's less exploitation and more charitable donations and more charitable work, which leads to justice among people, doesn't lead to exploitation, doesn't lead to discrimination and prejudices. That's why they're called wankers. One world wankers paradise. One world trade centers, one world wankers. One world wankers paradise. That's what it is. That's what it represents. They just serve money. They don't serve God. They're in it for the money. They think like a crook. And they think it's all crooked because they are crooked and they're full of witchcraft and sorcery. But God blesses those who submit to Him, because God is in control of everything. Whereas those who disbelieve in God, God has no need of Him. Those who disbelieve in God, God retributes them. God's retribution falls on them. I'll leave it there and see if I've got 15 minutes to run there. Why do I call it a myth? Because why is it a myth on diminishing returns? Because either it's a lie based on an observation, or either it's a myth. Just as there's a myth of the God incarnate, Jesus being the God incarnate, either it's a lie based on an observation, or either it's a myth. Now, a lot of people said it was a myth, but other people said it is an observation. Just as there's an observation that there's a lot of diminishing returns, but this was not an observation. This was an academic point that they thought was true. They thought there was a diminishing return because they were all wankers. Simple as that. It wasn't an observation of the Messiah or a lie.